Okay, fine.
Can I start, sir?
Yes,
Sir,
please.
permission to start, sir. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Dear principals and our eminent guests who have joined us today. We have our chairman, sir, Shri Manoj Ahuja ji. We have Joint Secretary, Ministry of Education, Mr. Santosh Kumar Yadav ji. We have among us Professor Niharika Vora ji, Mr. Raj Nehru, Mrs. Pankaj Mittal, and Professor Rajesh Khambayat. We have our heads of department CBSE also joining us. And among the audience, we have a lot of principals and various educationists who have joined us. This today's webinar is about promotion of skill education. As you all know, that NEP has laid a lot of stress upon promoting skill education among our students. So I would, without any further ado, I would like to request our chairman, Shri Manoj Ahuja ji, who is an IAS of 90 batch from the Odisha cadre and currently heading the Central Board of Secondary Education. He has taken a lot of initiatives to promote skill education in the CBSE also. So I would like to request sir for his opening remarks to set that ball rolling. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, RP, my colleague Santosh Yadav from the ministry, the eminent panelists who are here today, Professor Niharika Vora, Mr. Raj Nehru, Dr. Mrs. Pankaj Mittal, and Professor Rajesh Khambayat. My colleagues from CBSE itself, Dr. Saab would be moderating the session, Dr. Johri, Mr. Chaudhary, and Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, whose photograph I can see on the screen. The others might be there, so I'm welcoming them, and also my other colleagues from CBSE and all the eminent persons from schools who are tuning in or listening to this webinar. I think RP has pointed out, I mean, he alluded to the fact that the national education policy lays a lot of emphasis on vocational and skill education. All of us are aware, it says that at least 50% of students in schools and higher education should have exposure to vocational education. It also says that there should not be any hard separation between different subjects, and in the long run talks about universalizing vocational education. Regarding school education, out of 280,000 higher secondary schools and secondary schools in India, only about 20,000 schools offer skills and vocational education, out of which nearly 10,000 are CBSE schools. So if we are planning to universalize skills in the schooling sector, there's a long road to traverse, and we need to have our roadmap very clear. CBSE has, after the national education policy, introduced a number of courses of 14 hours approximate duration for standard 6 to 8, including coding and data sciences. It had also introduced artificial intelligence. It has about, I think, 18 to 19 courses for the secondary school and about 38 courses for the senior secondary level, 38 now 39, including AI and ITES. And what we have seen out of these courses, primarily it is the IT related courses like artificial intelligence or coding or data science, which has a lot of demand. And one of the challenges which will remain for the architects of this policy is to make vocational and skills education aspirational. And I think that is where the real challenge lies. It should not be treated as a secondary cousin of the academic fields. So 3 or 4 issues which are there in my mind, and since Santosh is there's a lot of funding under Samagra Shiksha program which goes to school, for setting up labs, for training of teachers, for internships, for on-the-job training. Some suggestions which we had in our mind through interaction with others, and which may be relevant for the policy domain. CBSE has set a target that we would expand in terms of courses, in terms of schools, what we offer in the vocational and skill sector in a very specific manner in the coming years. And we have tied up with AICTE, CVET, and also launched an Innovation Ambassadors program, an entrepreneurship program, all oriented towards this. One of the constraints we see is infrastructure. these programs do need physical infrastructure or labs. And some of the possible modes of bringing in economies of scale is using, hubs of learning. We have complexes where one school could, and it could be monetized, provide infrastructure to nearby schools, using infrastructure in terms of ITI, polytechnics, using the setup of training partners and the sector skill councils. And I think simplifying NSQF norms itself for certain trades. If you have to invest a lot, if we could bring them down, then maybe that makes it economical for the schools to do it, to invest. But one thing I do feel, if a school is putting up infrastructure, if you are able to utilize it in off-school hours by monetizing it, that itself would also lead to a lot of such infrastructure coming up. And regarding curriculum, the curriculum, it was designed more from a perspective of, providing vocational careers to students, and in a way, it's for plus 18. So a lot of flexibility and is required when we put it for the school sector. Dr. Kambayat's organization is doing a humongous job in that, but I think a lot of flexibility is required, and also allowing courses at what I would say is a NOS level. Putting them together and doing it. So what CBSE is envisaging is from 11 we'll increase our courses so that children get exposure to in the 6th to 8th class. In 9th and 10th, the secondary stage, we are looking again at more courses which offer multi-skilling, rather than focusing on one course. Maybe the children need an exposure to a large number of courses if you could do that. And in 11th and 12th, there could still be streams where some people would take them as for making their careers. That be a specialized students cohort on which we can design. But I think it's more, a lot of children would just like to take it as hobbies, may continue with their schooling and not want to take it as hobbies. So working out these niches and designing our courses for them, I think is one area we need to look at. And I think all the entire ecosystem which is working, the sector skill councils, the institutions, the educational institutions, we need to come together, the academic institutions, so that there is a synergy in all the resources and all the activities. And that itself can give a fillip to the entire sector. Besides linking them, these are common things, linking them up with internships, apprenticeships, on-the-job training, linking up, like I said earlier, with ITIs and other institutions. So there's a whole gamut of things which need to be done. The architecture is there. People are attempting it. But if we come together, then we can actually make a significant dent, or should I say, we will be able to make take significant steps in the direction of vocational education. Now, with the eminent panel here, with Santosh here, I'm sure this will give a very useful forum for discussing issues as to how to take vocational and skills sector forward in schools across the country. CBSE offers a large platform, and we would be willing to take up any pilots or templates, which could then be also taken up by other schools. So with that, I thank you very much for giving me an opportunity for giving this address, and do look forward to the deliberations and listening to Santosh and the eminent panelists who are here for this seminar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir, for the opening remarks and kind words. And you have really set the tone. Like NEP has said that there is no hard separation and we need to work in a collaborative approach. Similarly, like you said, all the institutions have to come together and work in collaboration for the promotion of skill education among our student generation. So with this, I would like to invite Shri Santosh Kumar Yadavji, who is Joint Secretary in the Department of School Education Literacy. He is an IAS of 1995 batch of the UP cadre. He holds a BTech and an MTech degree from IITs. And among other things that he's doing in ministry, he is heading the vocational education wing of the Samagar Shiksha, and he is heading the adolescent education program. He is handling the early childhood education and lot of other things to school education, the Fit India program, the sports program, the Rashtriya Avishkar Abhiyan, to name only a few. So अगर सर मैं बोलना शुरू करूं तो I can eat up all the time, but I would like to hand over the mic to you, sir, so that we can listen to your keynote address and benefit from your intellect.
So, respected Chairman, sir, and dear panelists, Professor Kambayat, and all the Gurujans present over here. I mean, very nice listening to you, setting the tone, sir. This is rightly said. NEP of all 60-page documents, 60 पेज में से full 4 पेज, 4 pages gives to vocational education. Such is the importance given to it. Oh, sir, this is the right opportunity, right time also, because we got good support. We got our minister, who is education minister as well as skill education minister. So we cannot get better synergy than this. And right now in the ministry, what we are doing, we are just looking for. I mean, we are imbibing all the ideas. Whosoever gives the, whosoever tells us, we just think of there's a core group. Even in today's deliberations, lots of panelists, whatever they say, we'll work upon it. We are reaching everybody. We are 2 days after this, we are again holding a webinar on 21st century skills with various sector councils. We are going to NCBT. I mean, such is just I'm telling you, such is the mahal, such is the environment, such is the reception of the this vocational education. Sir, it has been said rightly said about this NEP, no hard separation, all that. Today, what I am going to develop on is much more important than that. That is pre-vocational, sir. So, what NEP says, for the first time, it says, look, there has to be vocational exposure. Means vocational exposure means the kid ab initio. The word is catch them young. I mean, from the class 6 only, if I am given the exposure, if I am given the, then I have a right to choose. When I go in class, not that we know that not everybody is going, not every kid is going to go in the field of vocational education. They are, but it's a question of making a good human. And if you know, like singing is vocation. If I give exposure about singing, look, I mean, till now I do not know about the cooking. I should have had the exposure of cooking also. So why not? So what we are doing, right now we are preparing pre-vocational vocational exposure guidelines. We are taking suggestions from everybody. A set has been sent by Professor Khambayat to NCERT. I mean, we will after get all the suggestions, we'll send it to states. We'll take their comments, and then the state will have free choice. They can adopt it. They can adapt it. So technically, we are totally, sir, we are trying to change the way vocational education will be taught. Like suppose there is a school scenario. In a school, just imagine a school. Say the school is class up to class 8th. Children have midday meals. So in the school premises also there will be kitchen garden. अब उस किचन गार्डन से हम बच्चों को, क्योंकि किचन गार्डन क्या होगा बच्चे को उसको, सो व्हाट लर्न लॉट्स ऑफ थिंग, कि अगर वो किचन गार्डन है तो उसमें जो उसकी कैरी है, वो भी से व्हाट इज सेफ, व्हाट द एरिया, हाउ इसमें इफ इट इज टू बी वाटर्ड, कितनी बकेट से वाटर लगती है, कितना उसको वॉल्यूम होता है, पानी इवेपोरेटर, ही लर्न द इवेपोरेशंस, ही लर्न द सीजन, I mean he'll learn in what season what particular say vegetable or herb. I mean lots of things. So what we are trying to make, make vocational education not mundane. It should be engaging not only for the students but also for the guru also. I mean वो मन से जब he'll be engaged, मन से पढ़ाएगा बच्चा, मन से उसको imbibe करेगा. It will not be bookish. Whatever we'll try to make it all experiential. I mean, suppose it's inter-college there's a playground. So we will, lots of activity will link, okay, because once you at that particular age, say it is said कि जब आप बचपन की यादें हमेशा till last day of life आदमी भूलता नहीं. So if we are, अगर उस प्ले ग्राउंड से उस बच्चे को हम उसको एरिया डायमेंशन सिखा देंगे, we will do that. So sir, primarily what we in school education are looking for bright ideas, and that's why we are. I mean, we lots of panelists, we lots of bodies. So with this, this is what I had to submit. I mean, I'm pretty sure that we'll gain a lot from this. From this webinar of today, because this all will go into inputs of making a good, workable vocational education policy. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for your keynote address. And very rightly said that we have to begin, catch them young, and we have to inbuilt into the education system the importance of skills and not separate them and instill them the values right from the beginning. Thank you so much for your kind views, sir. I would like to now invite the panel. Among the panel, we have very eminent educationists today with us. We have Professor Dr. Niharika Voraji, who has been an eminent professor of IIM Ahmedabad for more than 2 decades. She has headed IIM Ahmedabad's Center for Innovation, Incubation and Entrepreneurship. Presently, she is the founder, Vice Chancellor of the Delhi Skill and Entrepreneurship University. Welcome, ma'am, to this webinar. I would now like to welcome Shri Raj Nehruji, who is a distinguished educationist and has worked for several decades in the industry also. He is heading the Haryana Skill Development Mission and is the founder, Vice Chancellor of the Shri Vishwakarma Skill University, Haryana. Welcome to the webinar, sir. I would also like to welcome Dr. Mrs. Pankaj Mittal, who is the Secretary General of the Association of Indian Universities, Delhi, and is the second woman Secretary General of this association in its 96 years of existence. She has been serving the higher education sector for more than 3 decades at senior positions in the University Grants Commission of India. Welcome to the webinar, ma'am. I would also like to welcome Dr. Rajesh P. Khambayaji, who is the Joint Director at Pandit Sundarlal Sharma Central Institute of Vocational Education, Bhopal. Earlier, he was the Professor and Head of Education in the National Institute of Technical Teachers Training and Research. He has been the man who has taken a lot of initiatives in implementing skill education. Welcome to the webinar, sir. And we have our Director, Dr. Biswajit Sahaji, who is the Director of the Skill Education and the Training Wing of CBSE. He is the man who has been with the Vocational Education Department, which was the earlier name of the Skill Education Department of CBSE for many years. He will be the moderator for this panel, and I hand over the mic to Dr. Saha. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. R.P. Singh, and respected Chairman, CBSE, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Education, all the eminent panelists who have joined us despite of their busy schedule, and my colleague directors from CBSE, other colleague from CBSE headquarters as well as from the regional office, and of course participant, principal, and teachers who have joined us virtually. It's a great occasion where we are discussing on skilling on school, and that too also the panelists who are mainly representing the higher education sector. The topmost skill university one way, and other way the Secretary General of Association of Indian University, and also the curriculum mission head, Professor Khambaya, representing PESI Bhopal. I think it's a great mix, and I strongly believe the participants are going to be benefited out of their wisdom and the way Government of India, by means of new education policy, is trying to promote skill education and as a skill hub. One way demographic dividend, and other way pandemic always given us the opportunity how organizations are going to adapt new mission and new problem solving approach. And considering this scene in mind, I think so all the way the vision of education and the delivery model, every day our educationist principal, our teachers are trying to change and so that it suits the requirement of the student. मैं ज़्यादा समय ना लेके हमारा all eminent panelists को मैं invite करना चाहूँगा. First of all, let me invite Dr. Niharika Bora to give her idea and what way this new university in Delhi is trying to encash this opportunity of one way skill unemployment and other way skill promotion so that aspirations of the students are really met and not disturbed by any means of education turbulence. So with this, let me invite you, ma'am. You can share your vision and also guide the principal of school so that they can really energize to take up the skill promotion despite of the location, geography, and other challenges. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Saha, for the invitation. And thank you, other members of the panel, for setting the context. Mr. Manoj Ahuja, Mr. Santosh Yadav, and RP Singh ji. I think it's a fascinating opportunity for all of us to be able to think about what and how we can possibly, have skill training from the very beginning of the college, from beginning of education. I want to actually read out two quotes which to make my point, to start my point, which I think would help us to also look at how deep this needs to be. The first quote is by John Gardner, which I'm sure many of us have heard about, especially in the context of multiple intelligence. And I'm just going to read the quote rather than try to say it by heart, because it's a very, very meaningful quote. And some of you might have heard about it. The quote says, "The society which scorns excellence in plumbing as a humble activity and tolerates shoddiness in philosophy because it is an exalted activity will have neither good plumbing nor good philosophy. Neither its pipes nor its theories will hold water." I think it's a very telling quote. I don't know with who he kept this, which country and which society he wrote this with his mind on, but it's definitely something that we all need to pay attention to, because in a way, we have neither, in the current context, paid attention to skills that are required as basic as plumbing and construction, nor have we really produced great philosophy in the recent past. So we might have done something 5,000 years ago, but I think it's important, what have we done now? And I think part of it comes from our almost scorn for something that has something to do with hands. So that is one quote that I want to set the context of. The second quote, the second piece I want to read is by Mahatma Gandhi, which he wrote in a magazine that he used to edit. The name of the magazine was Harijan, and this he wrote in September 11th, 1937. And while this was written in 1937, when I finish reading it, I think every one of you will have a little bit of goosebumps because it looks so contemporary and so useful. And I'm just going to read it. I'm sorry, for not having for reading it, because I think it's important that I read it rather than try to paraphrase it. So he says, the question he says he's answering in this article is, why manual training? Yeah. And he starts with saying, "I'm afraid you have not sufficiently grasped the principle that spinning, carding, etc. should be the means of intellectual training. What is being done there is that it is a supplementary course to the intellectual course." So spinning and carding, he's saying, unfortunately, is actually a supplementary course to the intellectual course. And he goes on to say, "I want you to appreciate the difference between the two. A carpenter teaches me carpentry. I shall learn it mechanically from him, and as a result, I shall know the use of various tools, but that will hardly develop my intellect. But if the same thing is taught to me by one who has taken a scientific training in carpentry, he will stimulate my intellect too. For not only shall I then have to become an expert carpenter, but also an engineer. For the expert will have taught me mathematics, also taught me the difference between the various kinds of timber, the place where they come from, giving me thus knowledge of geography and also a little knowledge of agriculture. He will also have taught me to draw models of my tools and given me a knowledge of elementary geometry and arithmetic. It is likely you do not correlate manual work with intellectual training, which is given exclusively through reading and writing. I must confess that all I have up to now said is that manual training must be given side by side with intellectual training, and it should have a principal place in national education. But now I say that principal means of stimulating the intellect should be manual training. So he's actually making a change here. I have come to this conclusion because the intellect of our children is getting wasted. Our boys do not know what to do on leaving schools. True education is that which draws out and stimulates the spiritual, intellectual, and physical faculties of the children. This education ought to be for them a kind of insurance against unemployment. And I'm not saying this is Mahatma Gandhi. And as I said, you would see that you would have goosebumps because what he has said is something that it continues to hold relevance today. We have created graduates who at the end of their graduation spend 4 years trying to get a government job, which is 1% of the jobs that are held in the country. They are trying to get a job which is possibly less risky, but is definitely not going to challenge them in their life. And they are not doing something because they're interested in doing it. They're doing it because it is an insurance for a comfortable life. Yeah, all I'm trying to say is that I think somewhere in the entire space, our educational system and process has failed us because we've reduced education to getting a degree, not to learning a skill. The second thing that I want to say is that if you look at the future of work reports, if you look at the Asian development reports of 2021, all of them say that in the future of work, where there is going to be more destruction of jobs rather than creation of jobs, and in 5 to 7 years, the number of people and machines that are going to be employed is going to half and half. They are saying the 4 skills that are going to be most important are problem solving, critical thinking, analysis, resilience, and openness to learning. And I must say that these are skills that cannot be taught by how we teach our subjects in our classrooms. So as Santoshji rightly pointed out, when you get the child to go out and do something with their hands, they will on their own start to learn problem solving. They will on their own start to learn critical thinking. So skills does not mean coding. Skills does not mean writing something very beautifully, but skills means the ability to discern, develop judgment, and those discernment and developing judgment is something that only comes when you do something repeatedly and well. So my sense is that while at the university level we are saying let us create job oriented courses, let us create them with the help of the industry, that is not what skill education has to mean at the school level. Skill education at the school level has to mean the ability for the child or for the student to recognize what it means to create excellence, what it means to do something how manual training, as Gandhiji says, helps me in my intellectual growth, how when I work with my hands, I also develop my brain, and also, as we say, we start to dignify all kinds of work rather than one kind of work over the other. Any society which dignifies a certain kind of work over the other is going to be a very lopsided society. Creating a sustainable, equalized society as much a responsibility of educators as much as creating IIT toppers. IIT toppers does not lead to development in the long run, while a citizenry, a group of people who have learned to balance environmental, social, and governance concerns in the right way, rather than as a formula in the report that they submit, is really the mark of a nation that is going to progress. So what I'm saying is, as educators, as schools, at the school level, I think we all need to start giving as much accord and importance to doing things with hands, with doing things experientially, and learning to develop insights from experiential learning, which will lead us to develop better. So maybe I will stop here. I've spoken longer than 8 minutes, but my sense is that it's important that we rethink of it as with broader arching goals than compared to a university. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think the powerful quote of both Mahatma Gandhi and John Gardner, and with your voice and your thinking towards, especially for the what way that skill should be promoted in the school segment, despite of that industry involvement and other things in different sector of economy. I think it's truly accepted by all the participants. Thank you, ma'am. And now let me invite Raj Nehru ji. He is Vice Chancellor of Haryana Vishwakarma Skill University. And here, if we look into that citizen skill, one way citizen skill and growth mindset, and other way, one innovative category of schools CBSE has affiliated recently as a feeder schools of Haryana Vishwakarma Skill University, through which one of its kind school within the university systems will offer skill courses along with the academic subjects from class 9 to 12. I would like to request Professor Nehru, what way we can really promote again skilling in school, and also because that citizen skill at the time of pandemics, I think many of the organizations are shifting towards autonomy, autonomous, as well as industry-led program. So considering this perspective, how our traditional skill set without automation can survive, and how university and school systems together we can promote those skills. And again, I truly admire that Gandhiji's contemporary thought, still date it is prevails. Over to you, sir. Kindly unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Saha. Honorable Chairman, Joint Secretary, and Mr. Saha, along with my co-panelists from AIU, Dr. Pankaj Mittal, Professor Niharika, and Professor Rajesh. It's a pleasure to talk about the subject. I was hearing Professor Niharika, and she very aptly gave certain quotes, and it prompted me also to think of a quote, and the quote that struck my mind quickest was Vivekananda's quote, which says that education is the manifestation of the perfection already present in a person. And with this I start, Because when we say perfection is already existing in a person or in an individual, it means that there is something which is already there, which has not to be created, and which means that there needs to be a mechanism to let that perfection that exists in one form or the other form, and there needs to be a mechanism to give a way to that perfection to come out. The biggest challenge in my personal experience in last couple of decades I have seen with the children is that we do not have a very well structured mechanism to judge a child's interest in a particular field. Neither do we have a mechanism to let a child find his own interests and where his or her interests lie and pursue that. This is one of the biggest challenges today that the education system is struggling with. And that results into the poor quality of their progression as they progress in their lives. And eventually, when they want to enter into higher education or secondary education or senior secondary education, their quality of pursuing their education is also very poor. And eventually, when they land in the higher education, the overall output goes from bad to worse. So I feel the most important the most important factor that is responsible is that there is no structured mechanism to help a child to know himself or herself where his or her interests lie, and there is no mechanism to judge a child's interest in a particular field so that we know where the child's interests lie and we can pursue that. And this is one of the reasons that is that's creating so much of dropouts in the schools, that's creating so much of poor performance of the children. And I was looking at one of the reports which says that 1 out of 4 children are leaving class 8 without any basic reading skills because they are not able to pursue the areas which are of their own interest, and hence all that gets impacted. So this is number one. Number two, I feel that children today, when we are talking about children, I think we should talk about all the children in the country. And 70% of our children, they belong to rural belts, and then almost 50% of that is from the semi-tribal and tribal belts. So a huge population today is not from the urban cities and well-to-do families. Now, when you look at these children, their first language is the mother tongue, and their expressions, their understanding, their comprehension, everything can be facilitated only when they are provided a basic education, preliminary education in their mother tongue or in the local language that they are more conversant with. And what happens when we do not do this the way it is to be done? We eventually miss the bus, and eventually we do not have child catching up with the challenges of the higher education or the education which a child has to pursue. So this is challenge number 2. The challenge number 3 is the parental orientation. Even today, when the child is born, he is largely dependent upon the how the parents will guide and groom and nurture the child. I think we do not have a very structured parental orientation today, especially when we move away from the urban cities to the rural and the semi-rural and tribal belts. So they are completely dependent upon the ignorance of their parents, and sometimes that is also becoming a big issue for children to really pursue. Another area I think I feel is the lack of skill development opportunities at the preliminary level, earlier stages of the child's life. So I'm not talking about the vocational education. I'm talking about appreciating the skills at early stages of life. So when the child is between 5 to 12 years of age, I think there is a big need of providing skill-based education in a variety of fields, including now the new education policy is talking about it in the form of Lok Vidyas. But that is where today we need to focus on how children can be oriented with the skills at a very early stages of life, so that they can appreciate the working by hand. And then later, when they move to the secondary and senior secondary schools, they are provided with the vocational subjects that can be added to their overall syllabus, and then create an integration of the skill and formal education as we move on. The challenge today that we face is the skilled teachers. I think one of the biggest problem today is, even if you want to do something at the school level, the teachers are not fully skilled. And as you move up, there is no clarity of how to integrate vocational education into the general education that you are offering. That mapping and mismatch is also another challenge that we have to figure out, how we make sure that the children move through a progression of where their preferences are respected, their preferences are converted to competence, their competence is given opportunity through a skill and vocational model, and eventually they pursue that vocation into a profession at the later stages, or they may want to pick up a higher education in that. So one important thing is lack of skilled faculty. Another is creation of facilities for the skilling. Even if you want to do something for the faculty, you train faculty, you need to have that ecosystem, you need to have that infrastructure for skilling, and then you need to have those material and books for that. So to begin with, I just stop myself here, and this is as an introductory remark on this subject. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think you have highlighted the crucial point, what way both parents, teacher and student can gear up to take the skill courses. At this point of time, let me invite Professor Pankaj Mittal to highlight her vision of skilling, and as you are holding a responsibility of Association of Indian University. I think it is a common question, say usually we hear in every forum of especially school principal. If we opt a skill subject, especially at senior secondary level, how our students are going to be benefited in university system. So vertical mobility is a issue, but of course NEP has rained down the thing. Maybe university leader are thinking, and you might be helping the university leader to think in this direction. So I think so we want to hear your view, so that our energy level, especially our educator, teacher in schools and principal in school, they really geared up. Yes, there is a hope and new idea, and these things are already rolling. So we can now, it's time to promote the skilling in school. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Saha. Thank you very much for inviting me here and giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you. Thanks to Professor Manoj Yadav, the director of CBSE, all the panelists whom I've been hearing, and great quotes from Gardner to Gandhi to Vivekananda, which I have been hearing. So I am not able to remember any quote, but then I thought, let me start with a story. Because when we talk of school education and when we talk of children, stories are something which do magic, because stories are something which place the point, the perspective in a very, very nice manner. And this is not a story, this is an actual situation which existed before Einstein, more than 100 years back. It goes like this, that in 1905, Einstein gave a question paper to his students. And when the teaching assistant of Einstein saw that question paper, he was surprised, bewildered. He came back to Einstein running, and with a expression of some surprise on his face, he says, "Sir, there has been a mistake." Einstein says, "What mistake?" He says, "Sir, this is the same question paper you gave to the same set of students last year also. So this year also same question paper, there seems to be a terrible mistake." Einstein kept cool, he smiled. He says, "There is no mistake. The questions are the same, but the answers are different." Why? Because in 1904, Einstein published 4 papers which changed the very paradigm of physics education. That was theory of relativity, that was Brownian motion, that is that energy mass relationship is equal to mc square. Like this, he published 4 papers which changed the very paradigm of physics education, and he wanted to see whether those students have studied those papers or not, because if they have studied, the answers will be totally different from what they answered last year. So the questions were the same, but the answers were different. Similarly, with this NEP, before the NEP and after the NEP, questions are the same. Like what to teach, how to assess the students, how to perceive the vocational education, how to integrate vocational education with the general education, how to integrate school and higher education. So questions are the same, but the answers pre-NEP and post-NEP are entirely different. So Mr. Santosh Yadav also, when he was speaking from the Ministry of Education, he was saying that in such a small document, 4 pages are devoted to the skill education. That itself shows the importance which is being given to skill education in the policy, both at the school level as well as at the higher education level. The policy very clearly indicates that the skill education or the vocational education in India is presently at a very, very low level. It mentions that in India, hardly 5% of the students are trained on a specific vocation or skill, whereas this number is much higher. In South Korea, it is something like 96%, Germany 75%, USA 52%. So if other countries are producing so many skilled graduates, if they are imparting skill education to that extent, why India is not doing that? That means there is something wrong somewhere. Therefore, the policy itself has recommended that at least 50% of our population should be skilled by 2025, and 2025 is not very far off. It is only 4 years ahead. So if you want to really equip 50% of our population with skill education, both at school level as well as the higher education level, you can understand that what type of a onerous task is in front of you. How is it possible? Do we have those many trainers? Do we have those many teachers? Do we have those many facilities? Do we have those many equipments, even classrooms? Or even if we want to give online, do we have, because online will also be imparted by the teachers only, it will not be imparted by the computers. Those teachers have to be required for that. So we have to understand that if we really want to promote skill education, one is that we have to lay emphasis on providing skill education first in terms of logistics, because the numbers are required, and second in terms of associating prestige and dignity with the skill. Today everybody says, I want my child to be an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer, but nobody says, I want my child to be an electrician or a plumber or a carpenter. That is not something which is perceived. But as soon as you go to a foreign country, now see, just now my daughter went to a foreign country for staying for 2-3 years, and there they are all doing everything by their own hand. And calling a plumber or a carpenter or an electrician is considered such an expensive activity that they feel, okay, let us all learn something on our own so that we can do small things on our own. In India also that situation is there, but here we are not associating prestige. The electrician is low paid, plumber is low paid, carpenter is low paid. Therefore, it is very easy for us to call anybody at any point of time and sort of associate that this is a small work. I should not be doing this. This is dedicated to someone else because they are meant to be doing these works. So the moment we associate dignity and prestige with the skill, I think the situation will totally change. And then everybody would be wanting to equip themselves or herself with the skill education, because the policy says that every student should be exposed to at least one vocation, at least one. Actually, there should be multiple. Like a child in our house, suppose a 12th class child is there, he should be able to say, change a electricity switch or change the in the tap. If washer is to be changed, he can change, or maybe some small things he should be able to do. But right now they are not taught. Even gardening they are not taught. So if one vocation at least they learn, maybe they will develop interest and they'll start learning more vocations. And at the same time, what we also need is the skill gap analysis. Skill gap analysis in two ways. Skill gap analysis in the sense that what we call as manpower planning. Today, in our country, we do not know, say 10 years from now, how many carpenters will be required, how many plumbers will be required, how many doctors will be required, how many engineers will be required, and if within engineers also, how many civil, how many electrical, how many mechanical, how many computer. We don't know any. We don't have any manpower planning with us. So the result is that we are not able to plan properly that what type of courses should be introduced in the university level or the school level, or what type of skills will be more sought after in future, so that the students can be taught those skills, so that the employability of the students increases. Because right now employability is a very, very major issue with our students, and employment as well as employability. So both have to be taken care of. And then even if you think of higher end, say higher education level, you know that, like, if you think of what will be the job scenario in 2030, so what fields will be having jobs? We'll be having jobs in artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, space tourism. We have seen Richard Branson and Jeff Bezos who have gone for space tourism. The jobs will be in cryptocurrency, jobs will be in mobile payments, job will be in virtual reality, augmented reality. But are we teaching all these skills to our students? Are we equipping them with the future skills so that they are future ready students? No, we are not. So the first thing which we have to do is do the curriculum mapping in such a manner, do the curriculum revision in such a manner, so that the students are able to get the skills which they will be requiring in future. It should not be that whatever we are teaching today is a sort of an obsolete education within, say, 5 years. By the time the student gets a degree, the education he has got is almost obsolete, because the new things have come into the market and the technology is changing so fast that we have to keep ourselves very, very sort of abreast or contemporary with the technology, and we have to have a lot of liaising with the industry. So the need of the hour is that we should be creating a population of skilled graduates who really know at least one skill, if not more. And by skill, I mean, when I speak at the school level, the skills maybe which are necessary for survival also. Like I'm also a National Commissioner of Rangers, and there I came to know that the students go in a camp. They go on a 21 days camp with some ration like dal, chawal, something with them, but no utensils, no gas, no stove, nothing. So from the jungle only they have to collect, say, टूटा हुआ घड़ा या बांस or something, and then they have to make fire and make food in it. So survival is taught to them. So if our students have to survive, and if they have to be gainfully employed, we have to give a lot of importance to skill education, as well as associate prestige with the skill, which is very, very important. So these were my initial remarks. Let us see how the discussion goes further. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. I think you have highlighted a very crucial point towards manpower planning and skill gap analysis, which really required. I think we are also exploring how we can work out with AIU and other organizations, so that maybe we can provide some literature based on which the future curriculum methodology and design thinking evolves and also changes as per the industry requirement. Now, let me request Professor Khambayat, who is also, rather his organization is partnered with CBSE, and especially for designing the curriculum of all vocational courses, what we are offering. And I think towards that vocational pedagogy, especially for the teachers training and other area which Professor Nehru has rightly mentioned. And I think what would be the future of curriculum design, especially for vocational courses in light of NEP? It would be offered in the same fashion of other academic subjects like physics, or it could be a history, or some new methodology, both in terms of curriculum design as well as in transactions, NCRT and PASIV is thinking, so that it's truly vocational, truly experiential. Actually, this is our expectation. Over to you, Professor Khambayat, because you are heading the organizations of curriculum design as well as teaching pedagogy in vocational. And under this NEP, we are supposed to write a white paper on NCF and how we can really remove the barrier of difference and multidisciplinary approach in school curriculum. Please.
Thank you, Dr. Shah for inviting me. First of all, very respected Shri Manoj Ahuja ji, respected Santosh Yadav ji, my fellow panelist, Dr. Shah Sahab, and all the delegates who are attending these deliberations. A very good afternoon to all of you. I think this discussion are going in a very, very interesting way. And particularly, let me add a couple of thoughts because we have listened to certain observations raised by Honorable Madam Niharika Oraji, then Dr. Raj Nehruji, then Madam Mittal has also highlighted certain observations regarding skilling. My understanding is that when we talk about concept of skilling, the concept of skilling itself is going a sea change now. Because we have just heard about a new age industry, Industry 4.0. We also heard about Internet of Things, big data, artificial intelligence, many things has been highlighted by my fellow panelists. So the notion of skilling is also getting changed. So first of all, we have to understand and appreciate that skilling, it do not only limit to hands-on skills. It do not limit to only psychomotor domain. So intellectual skills are also getting predominantly highlighted, and that also needs to be transferred among the students. So far, our entire focus has been the traditional way of skilling. But when we look about 21st century industries, then the notion of skilling has also to be revisited and has to be reimagined that how it is going to take place. And that's why skilling is a new different dimension that has to be taken up. Second important thing is skilling is gaining a high prominence across the sectors, as Dr. Saha rightly said, multi-sectoral, multidisciplinary things are happening. So we have to also understand that every job and every occupation, if you look at it, somewhere or the other way, every occupation requires 60 to 70% of skill domain component compared to the only knowledge component. So skills are getting prominence day by day, and that's why the need of the time is equipping our learners with right kind of skills. We also highlighted in the deliberation that early skilling is very, very important. And I'm very happy to tell you that our institution has already developed a pre-vocational education guideline so that students are well exposed right in the beginning. So we have already developed the learning activity, fun-based learning activity for classes 6 to 8, so that the students really understand what are the different occupations, what are the different sectors, what are the different skills, and how he or she can cultivate a specific sectors or the skill based on his aptitude and his interest. In order to support the students, to help the parents, to help the teachers, we have also developed vocational interest inventory so that the proper mapping with the skill set, the requirement, and his or her aptitude and interest can be done very easily. So a very scientific way of online vocational interest inventory has been developed by PSSCIB. And now we are also taking one step ahead. We are also developing vocational interest inventory for class 10 students who are much more matured in deciding the future course of their life, future course of their education, or further education or higher education and all that. So at 2 level, the students are going to be engaged and they will be exposed through this scientific approach of this. You'll be also pleased to know that we have already structured the vocational education at different level based on the National Occupation Standard and based on the National Skill Qualification Framework. The vocational education entire scheme has been properly designed. So class 9 and 10 is one cluster, then class 11 and 12 is another cluster on which the job role have been identified, which are well suited for the school education that has been already designed. Currently, our institution has developed around 152 job roles for 17 sectors of Indian economy, and these all curriculums, the textbooks are all being developed and are available on our website and all that. Now, as we look forward, as we look to the future planning of vocational education, I'm pleased to inform you that currently we have identified another 25 new job roles, which are mainly focused on the local needs, regional needs, state level needs, as well as the new age industries. And accordingly, new 25 job role will be added to the existing 152 job role, so that the student will have a variety of choices to cater to their requirement, to based on their aspirations and their interest and all that one. The last most important point is that the way we have been designing the vocational education program has also need to be relooked the way it should be. I fully agree with the observation of Dr. Ahujaji that we need a flexibility, because students are looking for a flexibility in vocational education program rather than going for a long-term program. So we need to have a mixed model. For the student needs early exposure, for there will be a different kind of program. Those who would like to take as a career, take it as a profession, for them probably this long-term vocational education programs will be much more suitable. But for vocational exposures, we are thinking about introducing modular-driven vocational education program, so that at least the child get exposed to at least one of the vocations and all that. So day after tomorrow, we'll be having more deliberation on this, that what 21st century skills and how this can be converted into a modular vocational education program, that we are going to discuss about it, and we are going to come up with that particular roadmap so that we can take it forward. Now, it has to be also thought about the delivery model also. So there has to be a blended approach. There will be certain vocational courses which will be online itself. So the student can get the online experience and also can get the simulations and take the vocational experience and all that. Because we have many advanced technology today available, there are few sectors in which this can be very well suited, and this way the vocational education can be offered in a variety of ways. And iOS is also exploring, and they are also working on it, how vocational education can be offered in a distance mode. So this is another dimension that we have to also think about it as we expand vocational education, giving more choices to the student to a variety of modes of delivery and all that. So I will stop for a while. And last but not the least, I will just add one more point. We are also simultaneously focusing on teacher preparation, because ultimately the vocational education will be transacted into the school level. So teacher preparation is very, very important. And for that reason, there are two important developments will be of some interest to many of us, will be that we have already launched a diploma in vocational education and training. It is in a distance mode, 1-year program. And now coming few months of time, we are going to launch a certificate in vocational pedagogy, so that students, the teachers across, whether they are state schools or CBSE school, the teacher are going to take the benefit of this online vocational pedagogy program. And this way, we expect that the quality of vocational education can be improved to a greater extent. Thank you at this point of time.
Thank you, Professor Kambayat, giving us the entire narrative, what PASIP is doing and how actually we must work together so that the discussions becomes more fruitful. So let me thank all the panelists at this point of time, and also ask some questions which we have received just now from my colleague. Basically, we have taken these questions from the participant. So these questions, maybe we may not discuss all the questions. There are too many questions he has shared with me. So let me just read out the first question. As the skilling in school sector is not easy because children are one way underage, and some of the CBSE schools pass outs may not go for job searchings right after 10th or 12th. So at this point of time, how should schools choose the vocational course? So these questions I am specially requesting Raj Nehru ji to respond.
Thank you. I think first of all, Sahasab, as a Vice Chancellor of Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, we would like to thank CBSE for considering the proposal that we had sent on setting up the innovation school in Sri Vishwakarma Skill University, that now here onwards we'll have a school where the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th qualifications would be equivalent to the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th of CBSE, with a flexible option where we will have language, 2 general subjects and 2 skill subjects now being offered to the students. And this is just the beginning of that innovation and flexibility that we'll be giving to the children who come with a different set of appetite and different set of attitude, which gets untapped because everything is a single brush stroke as far as the earlier education system was concerned. But with the introduction of these kind of models and more changes that we were hearing from Mr. Rajesh Kambhat about what they are doing, I'm sure it will provide a lot of flexibility to the youngsters to choose certain things based on their appetite. As far as children at early stages of life is concerned, I think what is missing today and which we need to introduce is children need to be exposed to the activities which may not be purely vocation in the beginning of their schooling. It may be more in the area of developing their exploratory skills, observing skills, listening skills, problem solving skills, decision making skills, because these are fundamentally important. And if they learn these things with a well structured pedagogy at the lower levels, and then how they handle their emotional stability, especially at the younger stages, I think these skill sets are very critical, and these need to be introduced with small activities that the schools and the teachers need to be trained for that. That's number one. And as we introduce the lokala and as well as the local skills as a part of their curriculum at the school level, with the cognitive skills that we are talking about, I think they become the perfect prepared students to explore new things, and they can be in the form of vocations when it comes to class 9, L1 onwards. And at L1 onwards, depending upon the child's appetite, if a child's appetite is more about mechanics, so you can connect him with some of the vocations that are existing in the automobile, that may be existing in the manufacturing, because there are many small, and even now the NSDA, NCVT is thinking of bringing a L0 level QP, because they only had L1 level. They are now trying to think of bringing L0, which means where they are getting aligned to the basics of vocation, depending upon their preferences. They may not have a science temperament, they may not have a mathematics temperament, they may not have a humanities temperament, they may have an artistic temperament. So when you are able to capture their artistic temperament and then create small vocations around those, I think that is the time when they will start becoming more receptive towards those vocations, and then you can have the opportunities of vertical mobility provided to them, which they can pursue as they pursue in the schools.
Sir, my next question is to Professor Pankaj Mittal. These questions we have received from our international school. Actually, many of our schools in Middle East offer a good number of skill subjects in their curriculum, both at secondary and senior secondary level. So from their side, we received one question: what options are there for the international student? Means, of course, they are Indian, pursuing their 10+2 program in Indian school in Oman or in UAE or Saudi Arabia. So, but they already opted skill subject. Now, their specific question is, in Indian university systems, what options are there for them if they opt skill subject at senior secondary level? Kindly unmute, ma'am.
Sorry. AIU gives equivalence of international baccalaureate to CBSE. So far we have been giving for academic subjects, and then we have a specific formula that these many subjects and these many at higher level, these many can be at the general lower level. But for skill education, the proposal is with us. We are considering that how many skill subjects can be considered as equivalent in terms of giving equivalence of IB to the CBSE 12th class. So that is under consideration. Maybe within a month or so it will be decided, and then we will let you.
Ma'am. Now let me ask a question to Professor Khambayat. This is again a specific question. What are some good practices prevalent in other countries that we can adopt in our schools to promote skilling? So your experience with UN and of course presently what PECIB is doing with Korea, I think you can share, and also that our school principals really take up it positive. Over to you, Professor Khambayat.
I think this is a very important issue that Dr. Saha has highlighted. You know, based upon the socio-economic level of the country, then the skill level of the country, every country adopt a different model and approach for skill development. One of the common practice, I would say, which can be quite inspiring for all of us to take it forward, which we have also attempted in some way, is that, you know, Madam Mittal also highlighted about employability of the students. And that's why many of the countries have also taken employability skill on the board along with vocational education. And that's why if you see now in India, all the vocational education courses are also being tangled along with employability skill. So this is one new development that which I would like to propose, that which has already been taken up. In Germany, if you take about vocational education program, every vocation program will also have some element of environmental aspect, like that we call it as a green skill aspect, because environment is becoming a very pressing concern across the world, and every industry is looking for certain core competencies as far as environment is concerned, and that they call it as a green occupation or green skill component and all that one. And that's why you will see that in our case also, under employability skill, we have included green skills. And it gives me immense pleasure to tell you that this integration of employability skill have been well recognized by European Training Foundation very recently, and we are awarded the Green Skill Award for 2021. So this is second new dimension that many of our school can take it. Means what we preach, we practice on the ground, on the campus. So this has been the German model you can see in many universities, in many vocational schools that we do. The third, which is very interesting of many of our CBSE school, will be the apprenticeship training. You'll be happy to know that even for class 8 student in Australia, there is a school apprenticeship program. So students from class 8 are eligible to go for undergoing apprenticeship training program. We have started very lately. We have brought many changes in the Apprenticeship Act now. Now, currently, vocational students are eligible to undergo apprenticeship training. Earlier, it was not there. But if you see that these 2-3 examples are quite interesting for all of us. Madam highlighted about the relevance of the vocational education program. It should be demand driven and industry linkages should be advocated there. So here again, the German model, the dual training system is of some interest to many of us, is that industries are driving the vocational education program in Germany. And in our case, it is not the way, it is other way around. So we have to see that how industries can derive and drive the vocational education program being offered in vocational schools and all that one. I think these are a couple of examples I think will be of some interest to us and all that one. And the last most important example I would highlight is the when we talk about vocational pedagogy, when we talk about diploma program, there is a qualification framework for vocational teachers in Philippines. So I think when we are preparing our teachers, particularly for vocational education, Philippines can be a good reference point for all of us, that there is already a qualification framework for vocational education teachers. So a mapping has already been done, starting from the level 1 to the next level. So a teacher who is entering into the school education and entering into a higher education program, more particularly in vocational education only, there is a proper system, and that's how the teachers are taking the benefit of that vocational framework for the teachers. So I think these some example which immediately comes to my mind to share with all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Kambal. Now let me ask a question to Professor Niharika ma'am. These questions is of course from Delhi and NCR regions. And this question is linked, partially answered by Professor Kambal, rather he highlighted. Now this question is especially on apprenticeship and traineeship. How can university can help us to combine on-job training with classroom? And also how can the school can assure the parents, yes, there is a huge prospect on the course and industry linkage, whether at the university level or school level, some way can help the teachers or principal to transform the parents mindset. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. I think it's a Herculean task to change people's mindsets to saying that I can actually have a future which is worth living if I'm not an engineer or a doctor or maybe a lawyer. So I think it's an Herculean task because that's what we face. While the reality is that today there are so many engineers who are jobless. There are so many engineering colleges whose students, whose seats don't get filled up, and there are so many jobs that are available, and there is such a dearth of talent in, let's say, the banking industry, the service industry, the industries such as e-commerce, logistics, and so on and so forth. And again, the point that I want to make is that there are jobs, but these jobs cannot be filled by people who have neither the attitude nor the training to do this work. These are fairly specialized roles. These require a certain amount of training before the person can get into the job. And I think what we are doing at Delhi School Skill and Entrepreneurship University and many other skill universities are doing are saying that let us train you in the 3 years that you are with us while you're doing your degree on the skills that the industry requires in the areas that they require it in. And while we are developing the skills, let not the faculty be the only ones who are developing the skills, but let it be done in partnership with the industry. Because after 3 years, if the industry says, look, you didn't teach them what we wanted them, then the fault is both ours and the industry's. The industry also needs to make a certain amount of investment into the training of the students who are going to be their future training partners. And at the same time, we also need to make a certain amount of flexibility in saying we will change the curriculum as per the needs of the industry. And this is easier said than done. Most of us find it very difficult to change curriculum. Most of us find it very difficult to sometimes accept the whims and fancies of the industry. The industry finds sometimes our way of thinking very difficult. So I think it's a process where both of us need to work together, and we need to say it is not for my good or your good, it is for our good. And when we will be able to show to the parents that your children, the youth are happier and they have jobs as soon as they step out of their colleges, I think the changes will start to begin. There is nothing that succeeds more than success, but I think it is the responsibility of all of us who have taken the lead of skill universities to create these success experiences, to create these conversations, so that when these conversations happen for the good of both the student and the industry, there is no stopping a good idea. and that is where I think we we have to be patient. We have to demonstrate success, and then I think I'm sure the parents will not find it difficult to accept the changes.
Thank you. Now, I would like to request, because we are at the fag end of our webinar. So, Professor Nehru, Dr. Mittal, Madam Bora, and Rajesh Kambed, Professor Kambedji, just last 1 or 2 line messages for our principal and our teachers who have joined us virtually, so that the future directions towards skilling in schools. 2 line quickly, if you can just highlight.
Sure, I can begin. I think one important thing for the whole, for the whole 20 years of a child's life, we keep on pushing them into a box. And when they reach 2021, we tell them to now start thinking out of box. And that's the challenge we all face. So if these 20 years are dealt in such a way where they are given freedom, empowerment, they are given opportunities to practice, the teachers are aligned to that part, I think that's where we will be allowing them to really experience their life the way they have been brought on this earth, and they will be able to express all those talents that they have brought in with them. So I think that's one part that I think is most important, and that requires us to understand every human being, every individual, every child, because every child is different and there are different talents available and existing in a child. So unless we give them opportunities to express their natural talents and then align them to the world of the work through whatever we do, we will not be able to create a great workforce in the country, or great talent in the country, or great mind in the country.
Thank you. Dr. Mittal?
So I would say that the children love to work with hands. So give them the opportunity to work with hands, they learn better. And at the same time, do enhance the prestige associated with the skill. Because unless the prestige as well as compensation given for skill jobs is enhanced, the skill is not going to flourish. Skill education is not going to flourish. So that is very, very important.
Thank you. Professor Kambed?
There are a couple of things I would like to add to particularly attention of the principals and the teachers. Every national education policy in India advocated about skilling and also about vocational education. But somehow the progress has been very uneven in India. But it is the first time, this national education policy has really looked in a holistic way rather than segregating general education and vocational education. There are many, interesting development has been advocated by the new national education policy. Now, as we have seen in the deliberation, the concept of skilling is getting changed, and we have to meet the aspirations of the students, and we have to also see that vocational education become aspirational. So we need a mindset change among the students, among the parents, among the teachers. And in order to make this happen, I think the game changer is going to be pre-vocational education. So my sincere request to all the principal is that if we can do very effectively pre-vocational education implementation, it is going to bring a big change in the mindset of the children. The experiences which they are going to learn through pre-vocational education, when these experiences will be shared with the parents, then the parents' outlook, the parents' mindset towards skill development is definitely going to change in the years to come. So our role has to be how effectively we can advocate and implement the pre-vocational education, because that is going to be the key game changer. Second important point, I would like to say that we may have excellent curriculum, we may have excellent resources, we may have excellent infrastructure, but ultimately the success of all our effort is going to rest on the shoulder of the teachers. And that's why teachers are the central pillar of the implementation of national education policy. So we need to equip them with right kind of training. So teachers are the center. With them, we need proper training so that they are well equipped. And second important is technology. Until and unless we advocate the use of technology, we are not going to get the desired success from vocational education that we are all envisaging. But I am hopeful and I'm very optimistic with such deliberations and discussions and the school food of thought we all got today. Definitely our principals and teachers are going to take this agenda in a much better for our strong India, or we can say a new India of 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Concluding remarks from Professor Niharika Boda. Kindly unmute, ma'am.
I said you have left the most difficult thing for me to do after all the great speakers and all the great thoughts. What can I add? I would just say that for the longest time, we have created and paid a lot of attention to what I often say is causal thinking, where there is this whole aspect of there are these given means and there is a predetermined goal. Your job is to select the best means to reach the predetermined goal. I think we need to move from there and say that there are a variety of means that we have in terms of talent, in terms of capabilities, in terms of interests, in terms of aptitudes and attitudes. My job as an educator is to help the student and me to come up with possible multiple imagined ends. Maybe it could be this, maybe it could be that, maybe it could be that, maybe it could be this and that. And therefore, once we are giving ourselves the freedom to say, with what I have, I may not be able to control the future, but I can shape the future. We are possibly in a better domain. So while it is uncertain, I think we have to recognize that we could be shapers rather than controllers. And when I move from shaping to controlling, I start to give back the agency to myself. And I start to say, I'm also, I could do this, and this, and there is no one best end. And as we move from multiple ends, we get into iterative ends as well. This leads me to this leads me to this, which is what life is about. So I think prepare people for life rather than for this one success. Thank you.
Excellent, ma'am. Thank you. Thanks to all the panelists. Such a enriching experience sharing session we have with all of you. It's our privilege rather to have you in this webinar, and I once again I strongly believe that all our participants who have joined us through YouTube channel and other social media platform, they have immensely benefited out of your thoughts. Thanks to our chairman CBSE, Sri Manoj Ahuja sir, Joint Secretary, Ministry of Education, and all my colleague, director, and others who have joined us from different regions of CBSE. So we are living through a fundamental transformation in the way we work, and the pace of change is actually accelerating. And considering this change, I think the right talent identifications and giving the right skill is always important. I think we will work together with this thought. Let me pause here. Over to RP Singh.
Thank you so much, sir. And a very thank you to all the panelists. Well, this is going to be a webinar which we have to watch again and again just to understand and imbibe what the speakers have spoken about. A lot of things have been developed upon: collaborative learning, bringing it back to the school, teacher training, skilling, curriculum, online teaching of skill subjects. Well, a lot of things, bright future ahead. If we have such educationists at the helm of affairs, definitely school life and the university life is going to change. When this webinar today had people from school education, people from the institutes which design the curriculum, people from institutes which implement the curriculum, and vice chancellors of a very different university, Skill and Entrepreneurship University, then vice chancellors of Skill University of Haryana, which also has a feeder school wherein the CBSE is doing some innovative scheme of studies to help the students to take up these courses. Well, thank you so much, panelists, and thank you so much to to Chairman CBSE, who has been the guiding force behind all the webinars that we've had. Thanks are also due to Dr. Joseph Emmanuel, Director Academics, who has been guiding us for this webinar series. And this webinar series has been very successful. Today, we had around 3,000 participants watching us live on YouTube. And I know after the webinar, many people who will share in their WhatsApp groups, the viewership is going to increase multifold. Thanks are also due to our director, Dr. Chaudhary, Dr. K.K. Chaudhary, who is heading the initiative in the northeastern region of CBSE. Thanks are also due to Dr. Antariksh Johri, sir. And with the permission of the chair, I would like to end this webinar now. But before doing that, I would like to thank Dr. Santosh Kumar Yadavji, who has been with us throughout the beginning, and he's still there with us in this webinar. Although he's very busy, but he has taken time to be with us in this webinar. With the permission of the chair, I would like to end the webinar now. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much.